Today's episode, Josh and I are going to look back on episode 1 in our preseason predictions pod of what we got right and, most importantly, what we got wrong. We also bring back trivia. All that next. Today's episode of the Two Pointers podcast is sponsored by Crack Technician Services. This awesome up-and-coming tech repair company can be your go-to for any tech repair service. From screen repair to battery replacement to speakers and so much more, they can fix it all. It is run by my good friend, Mr. Jonathan Hardy. You can inquire about a service by sending a message on Instagram at cracked_technician_services or by way of email, crackedtechnicianservices@gmail.com. Again, that's cracked_technician services on Instagram and crackedtechnicianservices@gmail.com. Two Pointers podcast listeners get an exclusive discount code. You can use TPP at checkout for 10% off your first service. Now on to today's episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Two Pointers podcast. I'm Josh.
I'm Trevor.
And today we're going to be looking back at episode 1 of the Two Pointers podcast when we made our preseason predictions of how we thought the season would go. We figured that now that we're roughly at the halfway point for the NBA season, with the All-Star break coming up in just a few days, that we would take time, look back at what we predicted. I think we got some things right. We also got some things drastically wrong. And yeah, we're just going to have fun looking back and making fun of our wrong opinions from the beginning of the season.
All right. Starting with the Eastern Conference. So what Josh and I figured we were going to do this is we were going to start with just going through 1 through 15 and just seeing if any, how drastically wrong, right? Like I said, right or wrong we were, as well as just some things about, maybe some surprises or some shocks from those, teams where they are in those positions. Beginning the pod, we had Milwaukee at number 1. Currently, as of today, is the March 1st, Monday. We are recording. The 76ers are currently first in the Eastern Conference. Both of us resoundingly had Milwaukee, Josh. Unfortunately, they are, as of this moment, not too far down. They're third. What do we think so far of Philly as a surprise, as well as where we had Milwaukee?
Yeah, first, I will still contend that I still think Milwaukee's the best team in the East. They're not at the top at the moment. I still think they're the best. However, okay, so we were both high on Philly, right? We both thought they did an incredible job in the offseason, and we thought they would take a step forward. But, I was very apprehensive on how much of a step forward they would take. I thought they would get better. I put them at 5th place. You had them at 3rd. You were a lot higher than I was. I even said, I don't have Philly quite as high as 3rd, which is funny now, considering they're in 1st place. But yeah, everything that we thought they did great in the offseason is working, and having Embiid and Simmons there together, healthy for the most part, they're doing a lot of winning. So, hey, props to Philly. I still think Milwaukee's the best team in the East, but props to Philly.
Yeah, I'm totally going to just start right there. We're just going to mesh 1 and 2 together here. Brooklyn right now is 2nd, and you're laughing because you know exactly what I'm about to ask. What you think the Milwaukee Bucks right this moment are a better team than a team with Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and Kevin Durant? I want to understand why.
One of these teams can play defense. One of these teams cannot.
Look, defense does win championships. I understand that point, but I think in my opinion, if I'm looking at a team, and now granted, I don't even, I'm going to totally contradict myself. I know listeners are going to love this, the loyal few that we do remember, that we do see. Shout out to you guys. But I don't even think either of those are the teams that come out of the East. So I'm going to contradict myself. But I feel like KD, Kyrie, and Harden, it's just in a 7-game series, you need 4 games. You're going to have a game where you got Kyrie who just goes crazy and scores 40. And maybe the other two don't do as well. You're going to have a Harden game. That's 2 games. You're going to have Durant game. That's 3 games. You're going to have a game where all 3 they're in a full cohesive unit. I feel like those 3 are going to beat anybody else's 5, really, quite frankly. I think it's just going to come down to somebody's got to stop them. And I agree with you. I do think Milwaukee can. But to me, going back to the Sixers point, we can roll down, keep going down the East. There's a few teams that I think are pretty scary for the Nets as well as the Sixers as well. But the Sixers, I think, can match up. Ben Simmons, I think, can match up to anybody right now. I think he's arguably the defensive player of the year, other than Rudy Gobert playing his heart out. So, Ben Simmons has been awesome, and he proved when Joel Embiid was out with that just back tightness a few weeks ago when he had 46. Like he's just as good as I've always thought. The Sixers are going to be the real deal, and I hope that Doc Rivers can be the guy to put them over the edge.
It's funny that we just spend all that time arguing about Brooklyn. We're supposed to be talking about Philly, but I think it's ironic that you're going to rant at me about Brooklyn, me underselling Brooklyn when I had Brooklyn at second and you had them at fourth. I understand this is pretty hard in trade, and I'll give you like some leeway there, although we were pretty certain that Brooklyn was a good possibility for Harden. It was either that or Philly, which may have impacted you putting them at third and fourth. But yeah, I mean,
I believed in Philly.
I don't think Brooklyn's bad. I think Brooklyn's the second best team. I think in how good I think they are. I realize that in the standings they are Philadelphia, Brooklyn, Milwaukee. I think it's Milwaukee, Brooklyn, Philadelphia and how that'll go in the playoffs. It's the third straight year where I'm picking Milwaukee to win the Eastern Conference. So don't put that much credit. I don't know. If I was good at making these predictions, I would say Charlotte's going to win, so I'd be right. But no, that's not going to.
We'll get to them in a little bit. I'm excited. The Nets, to be clear, mine was partly just skepticism of KD not being fully healthy, and obviously we technically recorded the preseason pod for the listeners, that for the 83 of you. Shout out to y'all who listened to that and realized like we technically recorded it after night one, but night one was 2 games. We got to see Brooklyn, but we had already written down our predictions and went through that. KD looks really good on opening night, and we were like, holy cow, we thought he was going to be the MVP. Obviously, the MVP just jumps back and forth like every day. It depends on what the narrative is that day. So it really they looked good, and we all the listeners, and as well as you and I, we both knew that it was going to be those 2 or 3 in the front there. Can I just say though, you had Miami at 3. Are we gonna roll through that?
Are we gonna roll through that you had Miami at 2? I feel like you have more explaining to do than I do.
I was hoping you were going to let it slide. It was a momentum pick with a shortened season. October to January, quite frankly, they had the second, or the most least amount of time. Sorry, can't talk today. The least amount of time between the previous final game they played and, of course, the first game of the season. Yeah, right now they're currently we're not even going really in order. We're just kind of rolling through our list and just comparison at this point. They are 5th right now at 17-17. Most everybody in that middle range there is going to be at 500 or a little bit under, just because of the shortened season, the way records are. They also heavily struggle with COVID stuff and injuries. We talked about the Heat. We almost hit the panic button a few weeks ago. Kind of glad we didn't. They're looking better, and I think they're going to catch the right team in the first couple rounds. If they play like a team like Indiana, I think they can give them some problems.
Yeah, I think for the most part, the problem with Miami right now is they're not scoring a ton. They're only averaging about 107 points per game scored. It's not very high.
It's really low right
now.
The other teams really low for this year.
And it's below the amount of points they're giving up, even with their great defense. That they have a high ranked defense, but they're not outscoring what their opponents are scoring on them. And that's a big issue for Miami. Now, they're on a 6-game winning streak, time of recording. They've really picked it up. I don't want to say probably on any of this. They might be in the playoff mix. We've got a lot of teams that might be in the playoff mix at about 500. So we were both very wrong about the Miami Heat.
I don't even know what number we're at now. So roll into the next section of we're going to, I guess, do this in sections. We basically just did 1 through 4 there in terms of our rankings compared to current. So where are we at now?
Oh, we didn't hit my number 4 yet.
Your number 4. Let's see.
I had you Raptors.
Toronto. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Toronto's the loss of Ibaka. I mean, we both agree on that. They're 7th, and Gasol, obviously. Yep. They are they're trying to get too much out of too little. I think it's really what it comes down to. I don't think eye test for me. 50% of my opinion is eye test. I've made that clear to the listeners. Kyle Lowry's not the same player. He's unfortunately I think he's hit that back half of his prime, and he's going to be really valuable for a team next year on a smaller contract or right before the trade deadline here as it's quick approaching. He could be a pretty big contract that could get moved for a contender possibly, but I just think the Raptors are trying to get too much out of too little, and Siakam just can't do it all. And Van Fleet.
Yeah, the only guy who's really been kind of an outstanding player for Toronto has been Chris Boucher coming off the bench. He's been great in the limited amount of time he's had.
You're going to try to make me say his name again. I knew you were going to do that again.
Well, what's his name, Trevor?
Bobby Boucher.
Yep, there it is. No, they're just not playing well. I underestimated the losses of Bach and Gasol, who even as older veterans are having amazing seasons. And that definitely hurt Toronto. Toronto, I think, is taking that step back. It's not one of those where I think, oh, they're going to come on late and they're going to do something. I don't see that happening. Now then again, I had them fourth beforehand, so who knows? Maybe I'm wrong again.
One thing I wanted to say about a team that we just discussed for a second that I noticed here looking back at the current standings, a team that is doing something that I think Toronto, we both thought Toronto was going to do better, and which is play defense. You mentioned how Miami's not scoring a lot, but they are on a 6-game win streak at this moment. So they're playing defense. They're not scoring a lot, like you mentioned. They're doing what we thought the Raptors probably were going to do. We obviously, yes, both had the Heat very high, but the Raptors, I just think they're not able to utilize the roster that well. I think they're a move away from just really trying to push, but I just don't know if the money's going to make any sense for any team. I know they were in the Drummond conversation. I think Lowry would have to go. It's looking real middle of the pack for the Raptors, like it has for the last 15, 20 years. I hope that they can get back to those winning ways, and I trust Masai Ujiri can get it done.
It's looking like in hindsight that for Toronto, despite the fact that he's having a good season, that money that was spent on Fred VanVleet might have been better spent splitting off to keep Serge Ibaka and Marc Gasol in Toronto if they were going to contend this season.
100% agree.
Moving
Can we
on
address
to
the elephant in the room?
Which one?
Can we address the elephant in the room? There's a lot of them, but the one in this section of the East, we're going to address the Boston Celtics.
Oh, fun.
we both, the reason I say that is we both had them pretty close to where they're at right now. I had them at 5, and I didn't feel good about it. I didn't feel better about Toronto above them. I should have had Indiana as high as I was on them. We'll get to them in a moment. I love Indiana, even though they're not playing too well lately. You had Boston at 6. I had Boston at 5. They're currently at 6. They're both, we had them pretty well there, but not to say that the Two Pointers podcast crew here predicted the Celtics horrible play here, but this team does not. Yeah, I'm not going to. I'm just going to say that I think the top of the East got way better, and I think they were the team that didn't get way better. We discussed that already on the first pod, but they just I don't even know what to. Brown really took a step forward, but because of Smart's injury and because of the lack of big man rotation depth, they're just not able to show me that they can win 2 or 3 big games in a row. And granted, they've beat some big teams like Milwaukee on opening night. Granted, that's opening night, fresh legs for everybody, right? But they've beat some quality teams, but they've also lost some really bad games. A couple recently, they've lost to the Pistons, they've lost to the Cavs, and they have lost to the Bulls as well. So, and that's in the past couple of weeks. So yeah, they're just I can't trust them in a 4-game series. And I think that was actually one of the quotes I got from you when I was studying for this pod is you didn't trust their lineup going towards the playoff time. I just because of the depth in the rotation.
Okay, so I'm going to go back in the exact things that I said in the beginning podcast.
I love that we I love how we have references.
I thought that Tatum and Brown were going to take big steps forward. I think I was right there.
Tatum already has, of course. Yeah.
Here's the spot where I was wrong. I thought the Celtics would struggle with Kemba Walker out. They did not. However, they are struggling with Kemba Walker in. Not saying that's fully a Kemba Walker thing. He has been wildly inconsistent this season since returning from knee injury. Marcus Smart being out, obviously a bigger hit to the Boston Celtics than Kemba Walker not being there. And also a thing that I think was a big hit to the Boston Celtics, which I also said they did not re-sign Gordon Hayward, who is playing incredibly in Charlotte.
Absolutely.
And the fact that the Boston Celtics are at the moment only 1 game ahead of the Charlotte Hornets, the place where they pawned off Terry Rozier and let Gordon Hayward walk to, is ironic and funny in a lot of ways.
Can we just use Boston as a transition to Charlotte because I'm so excited to talk about Charlotte. I'm not even the Charlotte fan on this podcast.
We'll leave Charlotte. I understand it's linked
We'll
with
get
the whole Terry and Gordon, but
we'll get to it in a moment. We've only got one more team to cover, but I want to say this one thing first while we're on that topic of since we have tied them together here in this little portion of the pod, that this is not. I wish this was a video podcast because I wish the listeners could see this, but you're going to be my witness to this. The way I take notes for this podcast, the way I study, the way I prepare for the listeners is I like to take notes and send notes to myself to make sure I remind. It's like quotes or points that I want to make sure I talk to Josh about, right? And I wish I was kidding, but just the other day, I thought we'd have time to cover it. We talked about Charlotte a little bit, but I'm going to bring it up now because it's a perfect point. Letting Kemba go for Charlotte was the smartest thing they've ever done as a franchise. And I literally texted it myself, and I'm holding it up to the screen where Josh can see it. And it's funny that we tied together the Boston and the Hornets points because it's literally we laughed at Michael Jordan. We laughed at the Terry Rozier signing. We laughed at, and I'm just going to save the rest of that for the Charlotte point. We as the media as a whole, I saw we saw a bunch of points of people that not happy about
it. I didn't laugh about it.
I was saying the clowning crying about the contracts. I got you. But before we get to Charlotte, we have to address the other major elephant in the room, because when I say elephant in the room, the top 8 is all that matters, really. Obviously, the playing game matters right there at the outside getting in, but they've got to play their way in. But the top 8 really does still matter for the most part. Top 7, quite frankly, is the freaking New York Knicks. They, at this moment, are 18-17 and are 4th in the Eastern Conference. I would say thoughts, but I don't even know what to say to you about that. And I want to say that I was very close to being really right. I never would have had them this high at 50% of the way through, but I did have them fighting for a playoff spot.
I originally predicted the New York Knicks would finish in 14th place.
There it is. I was waiting for that to come out. There it is. I wanted to hear it.
At the present moment, the New York Knicks are in 4th place. And I'm going to apologize to the New York Knicks. Because
their fans need
wrong.
It. Their fans need
it. I wasn't only wrong, but I don't think this is a fluke. I think they actually are playing playoff level basketball this season somehow. Thanks to Julius Randle carrying them on his back with everything he has, leading the team in points, rebounds, and assists per game.
Which is crazy too. He earned his time in New York. He really did. My prediction was I love RJ Barrett. I'm an RJ Barrett fan. I think he was awesome at Duke. I love watching him in high school. Love the Steve Nash connection. And it's truly, he's been good. 16 points per game, 6.5 rebounds, or 6 rebounds, 2.5 assists. He's not been horrible, but I thought he was going to be more influential, but yet they're still playing well. And also, by the way, missing Mitchell Robinson for a little bit of time. They haven't had Mitchell Robinson out there consistently. If I'm correct, he's still hurt as of recording this on the 1st, and they're still playing really well. They're getting what they can out of Julius Randle. He's been awesome. Former Laker, shout out to Julius Randle. He's looked really good. And like I said, I even made a point a few weeks ago I don't remember which spot it is now because we do these every week, but I made a point of how Julius Randle could be a Knick for quite a few years if he really, earns his contract and plays and gets an extension. You kind of looked at me funny. I'm proud I said that because Julius Randle looks really good. I'm happy for him, and I really think he scare someone.
Yeah, the funny looks for me was more of an RJ thing. His numbers on face value aren't that bad. I think he's been a little inefficient. He's looked like a second-year player. I think he's going to get better. He's 20 years old.
I'm talking about the looks on the last one about Julius Randle because I wrote on that train.
Nothing bad about
possible. Okay,
Julius. I've always thought he was a great player when he was in LA. I wanted him to get out of there because it didn't seem like LA had any future plans for him.
Wasn't a fit.
Well, LA wanted to send everybody out for a star player, and the young guys with talent wanted to play. And a lot of these young guys that left are playing great right now, which is a conversation for a different day. But Julius I've always thought he was a great player, and he's really balling out. He fully earned being an all-star, playing great.
Absolutely.
He's carrying the New York Knicks on his back, and we'll probably get to see what he can do in a playoff situation this year, which is going to be a wildly entertaining Eastern Conference playoffs if this keeps going at the rate it is.
Can I just say before we move on to Charlotte, because I'm pretty sure they're the next team that we're going to cover, or in that 8-7 spot. Can I just say that
how did we leave?
To talk
about before that?
Okay, awesome. I'll let you roll into that after this last point. I just can't believe us because we mentioned how Minnesota might be the most miserable franchise in the last 20 years in sports, quite frankly, not just the NBA. How did we forget about the Knicks? Now, granted, they had Carmelo for a little bit. They've had some big stars in that time period, Amari, right? But how did we forget about the Knicks? Talking about miserable franchises and like how ironically hilarious that the year that they're probably going to see a playoff team that's going to be really exciting and they may not have a single fan in the seat. It's so sad, and I feel so bad for them. And I've been to a game at Madison Square Garden. We'll cover that when we cover our basketball experiences pod in the offseason. I'm so excited to talk about it. Madison Square Garden's awesome. It's the mecca of basketball. I'll always believe that. And I'm so sorry, Knicks fans, that you're not going to get to see probably a full capacity game come this year, maybe next year.
I think there's still hope to have people there. Full capacity, maybe not.
So.
I know that
it's kind of like Buffalo. Buffalo allowed it. Like they were like, okay, cool. Buffalo Bills fans, like get them out there as little as possible.
Like in North Carolina, they started opening up for indoor arena games having a limited capacity this past week, and Charlotte's looking into it for when they return from the All-Star break because they're on a West Coast trip right now. But yeah, I mean, there's hope. There should be some people there. I think things could go in the right direction, which great for Knicks fans. Happy for them right now. We'll see how things go. Right. You know what? Yeah, we can jump in. We can jump in and go to Charlotte now.
Let's just get it out of the way. Is that how you feel?
Yeah. Oh, we've been talking about it. We might as well just get to
it. Where do we start?
So
they're my favorite team.
Okay, we both had Charlotte at 9. They're currently at 8. It's 9, it's 8, it's 4, depending on how this half a game falls on a daily basis. It's 4.
My point is not where they rank now, of course, especially because of certain season. Like you said, 7 means 4 and 4 means 8. Like it doesn't matter. My thing is just how awesome they look and how, if they're on TV or if they're on League Pass, quite frankly, because they're still a League Pass team, that kind of small market we've talked about, but they're my League Pass team. Like Sacramento's out the window. I love De'Aaron Fox enough and Marvin Bagley, but I'm not watching them on the West Coast unless they're on and it's really late. I really, really enjoy this team. I'm really excited for you personally, obviously, but more so just because LaMelo's proven his own. We've talked about Charlotte. I feel like this is becoming a half basketball podcast, half Charlotte Hornets podcast, and I'm totally okay with that. We're from the state of North Carolina. Shout out to the Hornets. The court looks awesome. The jerseys look awesome. Miles Bridges, there's one more dunk contest spot, Miles. If you get a call from the league office this week, I'm looking right into my camera. I wish this was a visual podcast. Miles, you better pick up the phone. I want to see you in the dunk contest because I was right about Obi Toppin, and I can't wait to see those two play against each other. I have nothing else to say. This team's awesome, and they could be an Andre Drummond sleeper in the trade still, but we're not going to talk about that.
I was looking at, really, I think the stat that sums up the Hornets this season the other day, which was, so the Charlotte Hornets are currently first in the NBA in point differential in the last 5 minutes of games. So no one has outplayed the Hornets. Well, I mean, it's been seen in the fact that a lot of these wins are these just ridiculous comebacks. We're coming off, I can't not talk about what happened last night. The Charlotte Hornets were in Sacramento down by 9 with 50 seconds last night. They won the game in regulation.
They won the game. Crazy.
Devontae Graham and Cody Zeller were not playing in that game. But, PJ Washington and Malik Monk, the Kentucky guys, put the team on their back and took it. Unlikely heroes. Yeah.
I love seeing this Kentucky fraternization, by the way, of we've always talked about it, but Charlotte has 3 players from Kentucky. Granted, Nick Richards doesn't play, but still, you've got 3 Kentucky guys. There's a relationship there. You can tell that on the court. It's really awesome to see.
And my favorite guy too, which is funny.
Yeah, I love the ACC. Ironic there, but my favorite thing is just they surprisingly play defense when they need it most. Like you mentioned, the 5-minute point differential. I actually had that written down. I was going to bring it up. Awesome that you did. One of us probably was. It was a matter of when, but they are winning these games and they're winning these meaningful games. And I say meaningful in the sense that like these games are going to matter. We were texting about this whenever that Warriors game happened with the Draymond call. Like that game's going to matter, Draymond call or not. That game's going to look back and it's like, oh, this quote unquote meaningless game. I felt so bad for you because like you've said, I feel like I've heard you say that my whole life about these Charlotte games in the middle of the season. They matter this year. 72 games. They look really good and they can shoot the freaking ball. They can shoot the ball lights out. They're awesome team. I feel like I'm turning into a Hornets fan. I told you the other night if the Lakers lost to the Wizards, I was accepting Charlotte Hornets applications, and I texted you the moment it was over and was like, you can send it via PDF, however you'd like. I'm willingly accepting applications.
Yeah, I've got to write you one up, but we'll get it there.
We'll
you have to agree to a few statements first, but we'll get there. Yeah. Gordon's earning his contract, which was a lot to hope for at the start for Charlotte. Terry Rozier looks better, amazingly, continuing to take steps forward and really defy the odds. LaMelo Ball was better than could have been hoped for. Like, you and I were both extremely high on LaMelo Ball, like everyone else that talks about basketball. We're extremely high about LaMelo Ball. I don't think anyone thought LaMelo Ball would be this
doubters. Good. No one did. To be clear, I don't think no one did.
He doesn't look like a rookie, is what the funny part is. He's definitely not playing one in Charlotte. He's playing a fully contributing member of the Charlotte Hornets team. It's not he's getting minutes to get him some experience. Now he's out there because they need him in order to do as well as they do. So, yeah, I mean, I have to be happy with Charlotte. I want a little more. They're giving me hope. Moving down the list, there's Indiana, which I don't feel like we really need to talk about. They're roughly around the spot where we thought they would be. They're in ninth place. We both had them at seventh, which that's a game separation. So,
and I'll say this: the one thing I do want to say about them that I'm very disappointed about is I said this verbatim on when we talked about. I believe you brought up Phoenix that pod, and I brought up Indiana as like this. Oh my gosh, this dark horse, right? I think it was our dark horse segment. And I was talking about House Sabonis, right? Best player on the team. No, not even close, I don't think. Brogdon, great. Playing well without TJ Warren. The key that was really important, and I think that they're truly missing, is Victor Oladipo.
He doesn't play for them anymore.
I know, and that's that's my whole point of this rant here, is Victor Oladipo was so important to that team, and they just gave him up for Karis LeVert. And I get why they gave him up. I totally understand. I'm not going to contradict myself. But Victor Oladipo meant more, and I understand that they weren't probably going to pay him. I totally get the logistics. But you look on paper, granted, they're not going to win a title this year, but on paper, they need Victor Oladipo, or they need Karis LeVert to be Victor Oladipo on both ends of the floor, and they're not going to get that. And I think Indiana, I don't want to call it a hot take, but if they can't get Warren back, or they can't get a next, a guy to step up and score, like maybe Doug McDermott or maybe one of the Holiday, they may fall out of they may be very, very close to fighting for a playing spot, unfortunately.
Well, I think I have more of a different perspective on why they got rid of Oladipo than you. Oladipo wanted to leave Indiana. It was a good situation that Indiana was able to get the return of a guy like Karis LeVert, which I think could work out. But yeah, obviously we were missing that impact of him there in Indiana. I still think roughly with the fact that there's a solid there's a solid 7 teams in the Eastern Conference from 4th to 10th place that just are basically the same. They're separated by 2 games. No, game and a half. They're separated by a game and a half between 4th and 10th.
Solely off eye test. For me specifically, I understand the whole 2 games thing. Like they've lost their last 3. For me, on paper, they're just. I'm scared for them and their fans for the fact that this team may start sliding very quickly, and we may not see it coming, and then we're wondering why they're fighting for a play-in or not in the play-in. If you watch that Warriors game the other night, totally random league pass game, Warriors Pacers. The Warriors, it looked competitive, basically into the third quarter, and then the Warriors just made them look silly on defense. It didn't feel like the same Indiana team. My whole point here is I understand the Oladipo thing. I'm just for the whole fact that we're looking forward and backward in this pod, we're looking, we're going to discuss a little bit forward as well as what we had. I had him in that range. I'm happy I had him in that range. Little did I know Victor Oladipo would be there to help them get into the playoffs a little bit easier.
Okay, I'm looking down to 10th place. The Chicago Bulls are in 10th. I still think it's too early for us to evaluate what we had on that. Yeah, shout out to the Bulls. We both had them at 13. They're doing a little bit better than that. We'll see where it goes from here. Those are my thoughts. I think that's all we really need to say about Chicago.
Right. Billy Donovan, Zach LaVine, that's it. It's literally Billy Donovan helping that team play a little bit better, and it's Zach LaVine being an all-star. I'll spend 2 seconds on Zach LaVine. His three-point shooting and shooting in general, he is in out of nowhere, by the way. He went from a dunker to a guy that looked like he couldn't play defense to a guy who you look like you could maybe start a franchise around him or who has a second player. And now whatever this like shot tier for NBA players is, there's like guys who can make the third tier of shots like consistently, the second tier. He's in that first tier. I'm just going to say it. I don't even think it's a hot take. He's in that tier of guys that he's the second best scoring efficiency in a month in February behind Michael Jordan. He's the second best shooting guard in Bulls history in shooting efficiency in the month of February. That's crazy. He's doing really, really well. He's playing defense, but you're getting consistency out of him. That's it on the Bulls. I don't have anything else. Patrick Williams looks good too, by the way. We were wrong on that.
So all right, we need to talk about Atlanta.
This one hurts.
I had Atlanta at
fresh
8th.
news, by the way.
You had them at 10th. You were closer than me, but so the Atlanta Hawks fired head coach Lloyd Pierce today after their struggles when we both had Atlanta as the biggest improvement of the season in the Eastern Conference. Again, sorry, New York, because you were the biggest improvement at this point in the Eastern Conference. But man, were we wrong. What is going on at Atlanta?
Unfortunately, fortunately for us, because the Two Pointers podcast had a news story break on a Monday and not a Tuesday. That was awesome to see. But I just truly think it comes down to, it wasn't Lloyd Pierce's fault, but he's obviously not got him into the playoff the last 3 years. The way they built the team around Trey, I don't want to spin forever. But Trey's an awesome player, but there needs to be they need to really focus on a defensive team around him. And they need to roll through and just re-gut that team. I'm not happy with the additions other than Rondo, and Rondo hasn't even been good.
Yeah, it's a tough spot for Atlanta. I really hope for them to get better going forward, but we will see. Go through these last few pretty quick. Currently, Washington's in 12th. So I want to say that I looked really right at putting them at 11, although I really wasn't that confident. You had them at 8. They're not. Beal and Westbrook don't work together.
No.
It's just not working out.
Unfortunately not.
Speeding through still. Orlando, 13th. I had Orlando way higher at 10. Vucevic is an all-star. Yay. Aaron Gordon and the rest of the team just not pulling them to where I thought they would be. I just expected Steve Clifford to get them to a higher spot, which didn't work out. Cleveland, second to last. You had them second to last. I had them last. Detroit, last. You're right there on that one. Only the second worst team in the NBA, though. So
we'll get to the other one. We already actually spent a lot of time with the other one, the other team that's very bad. And my final note here for the Eastern Conference, we can round it out. Sabonis over Vucevic. It's laughable that happened. That didn't happen. Cavs, great backcourt, whatever. And then Detroit Pistons, colon in my notes, smiley face, very bad. We can move on to the West.
Jeremy Grant, you're awesome.
Not an all-star.
Yeah, Western Conference. No, but you are great, Jeremy Grant. All right, so I'm going to go down what is the current standings in the West, and we will just compare that. So, Trev, go ahead and hit me with who's first in the West, Trev.
I'm gonna hit you with the top 3 because it's actually not far from what we had.
No. Let's hold off. And you just hit me with who's first in the Western Conference.
At 27-7, this really pains me to say this. You turd in the Two Pointers podcast listeners. That 27-7 and a 7.94 win percentage. the Utah Jazz are first in the Western Conference and first in the NBA. Next, no, we can't go off from there. They're really good, man. I even said, you asked me who's the best team to beat. It could beat the Lakers, and the Jazz are it, and they're scaring the crap out of me. And I don't even think LA's played them in the last 3 weeks, and they just played them this week up until that point, and they ran them off the floor, and I'm so scared. Please don't play Utah in the first or second round. Please. That's all I have to say. Like, we don't have to spend a second on the Lakers. Lakers look bad on defense. Jazz look good on defense. It is what it is. The Jazz look really good. I'm happy for Donovan Mitchell.
Well, if you don't want the Lakers playing the Jazz in the second round, you better hope they don't somehow fall to a 4 seed, which they're only a game ahead of at the moment. But yeah, so Utah exceeded all expectations that anyone had. No one's criticizing that Rudy Gobert deal. No one's thinking that they're going to blow it up between Mitchell and Gobert. Everything's looking up Utah. So the Jazz are incredible. It's outrageous. I had them at 5th, and I'm feeling like I was right in this scenario because you put them at 7 and thought that my 5th was outrageous for saying defense wins championships. I still think it does. I just didn't think that the Utah Jazz would be scoring 116 points per game. This is
crazy.
stupid.
And they're not even – and they're getting a down season from Joe Ingles.
Outrageous. It is insane. This brings me back to my Lakers doing great outside of LA point. Jordan Clarkson, 18 points per game off the bench for Utah.
You just love to do this to me, don't you?
Can you say 6th man of the year? Jordan Clarkson.
You know what's crazy? People laughed. I can tell you what changed his career is when he disappeared for like 3 weeks in that offseason. He got like that entire upper body tattooed, and he's now like 6th man of the year front runner. Like he just like gets tattoos and he turns into like the 6th man Lou Will overnight. I just don't get it.
Oh my gosh.
The Jazz, the only thing I have left on the Jazz, and then we can literally roll past 2 and 3. It's Lakers Clippers. We both had them 1, 2, 3 around that area. We'll get to the other team we had in the top 3 in a moment. Because I think our middle of the West was a little more shocking than the top 4. The chalk is chalk, right? Utah could be really scary if Utah gets fans and they make it far enough in the playoffs. They're a place that it makes teams really, really have to work when they're on the road in Utah. And if they stay in that 1 to 2 spot, they're going to be scary good.
That is not a place that you want to go play. Absolutely. Especially if they start letting fans in. Yep, you do not want to go play in Utah.
There's a reason.
Honestly, right now, Utah Jazz
struggled.
I'm not going to predict they're going to like make that leap, win the Western Conference, because I'm not going to go against LeBron James, who's made like 9 out of the last 10 NBA finals, or he's made every NBA finals in like the last 10 years where he's made the playoffs. And I'm not going to count against Kawhi Leonard at this moment, but man, do the Utah Jazz look like the best team in the NBA. Yeah,
and Paul George. Paul George has been awesome. You want to roll to 4?
Yeah, we can kind of skip Lakers, Clippers. So what's going on with Denver?
It is what it is. You're saying that because we both had them in the top 4, correct? Yes.
You had them 2, I had them 3. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I felt pretty good about 3 for you. Like I had them at 3 4 different times that week preparing for the pod. And then I put them at 2 because I thought the Clippers would just sit George and Kawhi a couple times more than they should. Denver just can't play consistent defense. They're not a bad defensive team, if I remember correctly, on defensive rating sake, at least. I don't have that in front of me, but when I watch them, they play better defense in situational points. They're a situational defensive team, but Jokic can only do so much. Murray is one of those guys. I mentioned it 2 weeks ago. Murray is just one of those guys that you're just going to have to hope gives you enough in the regular season, and then just hope he gives you another 30 to 40 points per game a couple different times in playoffs. I think their run was a little fluky, and I say that in the sense that they had a team that was built for that run, and now they don't. They're lacking a little bit of big man depth, and they're lacking a little bit more consistent three-point shooting. As crazy as this seems, they're missing Malik Beasley. Like, I truly think a player for him, like he's playing really well for Minnesota, and Minnesota's terrible, so it means nothing to me, and it means nothing to Minnesota. But they're missing a guy like him, and I'm not going to say they're missing Grant, but they're bad, and they're bad consistently in areas that are really important in the playoffs.
I think it's a defense thing. Their offense is still one of the better ones in the Western Conference. I can't imagine where they would be if Nikola Jokic wasn't playing the way he is right now. I'm not going to talk about Jokic right now because we'll talk about Jokic in a little bit once we get to talking about our MVP predictions and where we are now. But man, Denver was a shock. Okay. Your biggest riser, you got this nailed on the head. Fourth place, Western Conference, Phoenix Suns. Take it away.
Man, shout out to that man, Devin Booker, Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton, Bridges, and Cam Johnson. And I bring that 5 up for a reason. That is a 5 you do not want to play in the playoffs. If I wasn't a Lakers fan, I'd be a Suns fan right this moment. Devin Booker's awesome. Chris Paul makes that team really well, really good, really well. Gosh, it's late. Bridges is awesome. And believe it or not, as laughing as that Cam Johnson pick was at first with the trade up scenario there, he's made that team really, really good for what he offers. And Paul's made Ayton look really good. Like I said, I broke down one of those 5 as quickly as I could because we're going to get into the end here where we can we'll go over trivia and our MVP stuff. But I felt so good about that prediction. I have like one every year, and we've only done a pod for 1 year. I have one every year to either our friends or to myself. Like I have one good prediction every year, and this was my one. They're going to be scary. I think they're a team that could really, if they can play defense, they are going to match up against the Jazz well, the Clippers, just depending on if they can shoot the ball consistently.
Chris Paul doesn't age, I feel like. I had Phoenix at 7, making a jump to like make the playoffs finally. Like they're going to get there. They're in 4th. Like they look amazing.
6.
Yeah.
I had them at 6 to be clear. It wasn't that high, but I was high on them verbally.
You had it, but I just remembered because you said they'd be the biggest jump, and they definitely were the biggest jump. Unless you count Utah, but I think they went more spots up than Utah.
Correct. They went from like just outside the playoff bubble quotation marks, right?
And I think they went from 10th to 4th. Utah went from like 5th to 1st, so a little bit further. Yeah, Chris Paul doesn't age. Devin Booker is doing what he's been doing.
Don't say that yet. Don't say that yet. We
ain't made it to the conference
finals. We haven't made it to the Western Conference playoffs yet.
I thought Chris Paul was going to start regressing 3 years ago. Like he's still making every team he plays on remarkably better.
He'll regress and have a hamstring injury in Game 5 or Game 6 of a Western Conference series, and then
don't say that.
You said it, not me. I look. That's happened before, and I hope it doesn't happen this time because their point guard depth outside of him is bad.
Yeah.
Anything else on the Phoenix point? If not, what's next?
Phoenix was fun to watch, I have to say. All right.
Yep.
So going from when I just gave you a compliment, told you did great. Now I'm going to talk about how you made an idiotic statement. San Antonio's 5th. You thought it was outrageous that I said San Antonio would finish 9th. You thought that was outrageous. You had San Antonio 13th.
Yeah. I was going to say, you tell the listeners where I had them. Yeah.
13th.
Can I defend myself?
Can you
wrong? Let me
apologize to DeMar DeRozan first.
I'm apologizing.
Definitely able to get it done.
I am apologizing, and you quoted me verbatim, and I'll get to that. I am apologizing to Greg Popovich and no one else, and Becky Hammond. Shout out to both of them. I thought DeRozan, not necessarily DeRozan as much, but Aldridge more so, we're going to regress. I thought that team was going to be too young and not going to be able to play in a cohesive unit. Then I forgot who the head coach was. I forgot what the organization was. I forgot that they just always prove people wrong. And obviously they missed the playoffs last year, but it was the first time in 20 years. And I thought this was going to be the second year in a row. It is what it is. I don't have anything else to say otherwise. I should have had them a little higher. I agree.
Okay, to put it in words for the listeners, Trevor said, and I quote, "I don't think DeMar and LaMarcus Aldridge can get it done in San Antonio." For reference, DeMar DeRozan is averaging 20 points per game and 7 assists per game in San Antonio this season, and he looks every bit the DeMar DeRozan he was before.
Can I clarify?
Yep.
In the playoffs, and we're going to review at the end of the year, we're going to look back, and I want to be able to see if they make it out of the first round, and I don't know if they're going to.
I never said they would. I said that they were going to get in.
I did. I know. Shame on me. Shame on me. I should have been more clear, but playoffs is what I was obviously referring to in total ranking. I didn't even have them in the playoffs. Let me be clear. I had them at 13, but if they did rank my projection or I play my projection, then I just didn't think they'd be able to get it done and deep into the playoffs.
Fun trivia question, because it's just an outrageous stat. Can you guess for me how many San Antonio Spurs are averaging double figures? Don't Google it. Don't you know that?
6. I think I saw
8.
it yesterday. Was it 6? Oh, it was 8.
Talk about depth. DeMar DeRozan, DeJounte Murray, I believe Keldon Johnson, LaMarcus Aldridge, Patty Mills, Derek White, Rudy Gay, and Lonnie Walker. All averaging actually 11 or higher, not even 10. 11 or higher a game.
They hit on a lot of
that's
picks.
Team basketball, and that's great coaching.
They hit
One
on
of the
a lot
greatest
of picks
coaches in NBA history.
They hit on a lot of picks from 13 to 30. No surprise.
Yeah,
Let me roll down into the Portland Trailblazers. Currently, at this moment, Damian Lillard is keeping them alive with a single pulse of a heartbeat at 6 because they're falling apart and Nurkic is going to come back. McCollum's going to come back. Just Lillard's keeping them alive in every way possible. I don't have anything else to say about Portland. I really don't want to digress on Portland too much. We've covered them before, but Lillard is if they can finish in that 5-4, maybe, that middle range there that we really talked about, he could be that weird dark horse. And we actually had him as a weird dark horse in the MVP, but I thought they'd be fully healthy longer. So Portland looks really good.
I said it was going to be Lillard, McCollum, and supporting cast. Turns out it's Lillard and supporting cast, but yeah.
I knew you were going to quote that.
I had
that written down.
Right on the head, Portland place. Damian Lillard
funny.
carrying them there. I think I got that one right.
Yep.
7 was Denver. We already talked about. 8th place, Golden State. Neither of us knew what to do with them. I was a little more right than you. You had them at 14. Now, I'll give you credit. I'll give you credit. You didn't think Steph would be healthy. Not only has he been healthy, he's been awesome this season.
I don't want to digress on Golden State too much. I don't want to give Hunter that much satisfaction. Our friend Hunter, Golden State Warriors fan, shout out. In quotation marks, I put from my quoted on the first episode, probably was going to be wrong on this, but
yeah,
that's it. That's all I have about the Warriors. I'm probably going to be wrong. I'm sorry, Warriors fans. I'm excited for you, sort of. Curry's really good. You're missing Thompson, and you're getting probably the best that Andrew Wiggins and Kelly Oubre and every other player on that team is going to ever play in their career in one season. Congrats. It's not going to last forever.
How much time? I don't really have anything on Golden State, really, other than I feel like they're good. What I thought. Steph played well. How long do we want to spend talking about Dallas, who we talked about how wrong we were about this already?
Not at all. I want to say that we were continuously. This is now a week or 2 weeks after we've talked about Dallas.
Yeah.
We hit the panic button 2 weeks ago. Not 1 week ago. 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
They are at this moment 9th, 16-16. They have won 7 of the last 3. They're looking a little bit better, but it's because they're shooting the ball. They're in that little hot streak. They're going to win. They're going to win 3 or 4 in a row. Luka's going to help them do that. Defense is still atrocious. They're still in bottom 5 in defensive categories. I double checked before this pod because I wanted to make sure I made that point. If we talked about Dallas, they're in the bottom 5 or 6 in those statistical categories, which if they do get in, congrats. They're not going to beat anybody.
To be fair to Dallas, I will say they would be 5th in the Eastern Conference right now, tied for 5th. So to be fair to the Dallas.
The East is normally we always make that funny Eastern comparison point.
But it's usually like 9th in the West is 7th in the East. It's not like this.
Right. It's not drastic.
10, Memphis. I think you got that one.
Woo! I did. I know I had
think Memphis would be that good.
Memphis at 9. Memphis at 9, Sacramento 10. I don't think we need to spend any time talking about either of them. Ja's awesome. De'Aaron Fox is awesome, but they're kind of in that middle range there. I mean, Sacramento, obviously, we'll get to in a second further down. They're 13th. We don't really have to talk about them. They're bad. Their Western Conference, they've been horrible for a long time. We forgot them in that Minnesota point last pod about miserable teams. Kings are up there. Hope they can continue to build around De'Aaron Fox and Marvin Bagley.
So, moving on. In New Orleans, what did we get? Like, who's not playing well enough in New Orleans? Because Zion looks good. Lonzo Ball's been playing a lot better. Brandon Ingram, he doesn't look bad.
He looks like he's better than he was 3 years ago, 2 years ago. He's improving.
So why is New Orleans in 11th place? Why are they 14 and 19?
Hilariously enough, I had that written down. They can't figure out. I had the answer. I had it written down. They can't figure out how to be a cohesive unit. When they had the biggest comeback in franchise history against, it was the Boston Celtics, correct?
I don't know.
I think it was the Boston Celtics. I remember Bill Simmons crying about it. They couldn't figure out how to be a cohesive unit. It took Stan Van Gundy three and a half quarters, quite frankly, 3 quarters to figure out a lineup, and they came back from the biggest comeback in Pelicans history, and that team looked really good when those 5 were on the floor, but I still don't think they make the playoffs. I don't even think they make the playing game. I think they're going to be in that awful spot there. How did we think Steven Adams and Zion Williamson next to each other worked? I don't know. Spacing's horrible. They have a lot of key pieces that can play really well individually, but not really well together. That's all I have. Zion's awesome, by the way.
Yeah, New Orleans is another one of those teams. It feels like to me like our Atlanta prediction, but out west, team with a lot of talent that's just not putting it together right now.
Or just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Correct.
OKC, would you call OKC being in 12th a failure, considering they were trying for 15th?
I love that. Shout out to Grayson. Him and I have been talking about the Thunder just individually for the last 3 weeks. They're actually really fun to watch, and that team's bad. They have a bunch of bad players, and yet they're winning good games. It doesn't make any sense to me. Shea's awesome. I'd be lying if I said I just blanked and forgot every other player on that team. I really did. I genuinely, that's not a joke. I went to say Shea is awesome, and I forgot. Insert Thunder player here. Dort, there it is. Lou Dort. He's been really good defensively. He honestly, if somebody really wanted to throw that first round pick for him, they probably take it because they want first round picks. But a playoff team like Denver could really use Lou Dort right now. Period. The Lakers could use him, but that's not going to happen. But seriously, the Nuggets could throw a first round pick at him. They might take it. You never know.
The only untradeable player from OKC's perspective is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. That's the only untradeable player on their side. Everyone else, I don't doubt that they would trade.
Also, Poku's been horrible. Just totally throwing that out there. I know Thunder fans love him. Just
he's 18.
No, he's young.
Or just turned 19, but
he looks like he forgot how to play basketball. That's all I have.
Give him time to put on muscle mass, and we'll see. From the limited time I've seen him play, that was my one thing I noticed that I think he needs to do is put on a little more muscle mass. But yeah, we already covered Minnesota being bad last week. Last big thing to hit, Houston. I think I nailed it on the head. I thought they would do well. Start with James. I thought that the trade would come early. It did. And that they would tank hard afterwards, which they have. Yeah, frankly, Houston's doing exactly what it seemed like was going to happen.
I'm with this on Houston. John Wall doesn't want to lose. He looks frustrated.
No one wants to.
He looks genuinely frustrated with that organization, but nothing he can do about it, unfortunately. Christian Wood's awesome. And where do you want, not need, where do you want DeMarcus Cousins to go truly for him? Because I feel so bad for how his career has shaped up the last couple of years. He's been released as of recording this, obviously. Just for the listeners that might not follow the NBA that closely. If they made it this far, they're probably covering it closely, to be clear.
I don't know. I hadn't put a lot of thought into DeMarcus.
Could the Hornets use him right this moment? Just had a
yeah, sure. Depending on what his mobility is on the inside, we need someone who's going to play incredible defense. If DeMarcus is going to come play great defense, yeah, the Hornets could use him at the moment, but I don't know. I feel like a contender that wants another guy in there could try to take a shot at him. Yeah, I think it comes down to where his lower body is after all the injuries he's had in the past few years.
All right. Well, moving on from looking at how right and more so wrong Josh and I were to round out the beginning that we opened up with about being wrong. I had a good time doing that, but let's very quickly, before we get to trivia, just mention the MVP race, because Josh and I kind of sort of agree on this pretty closely. I think that MVP is not something we should discuss every week. It's not something that media people should discuss every week. It's stupid. The narrative changes. Let's not drag on. We had Luka as our MVP favorite. The world entirely had Luka Doncic as the MVP favorite. I'm not going to describe why we're going to even talk about that. They're bad. He's been playing well. We also had Damian Lillard as a sleeper. I wanted to say that we feel really good about that. We both had that. Other than that, though, you had Giannis. I had really no one, or vice versa. I had Giannis, and you had really no one as the sleeper, and Dame we kind of agreed on. So, who is the MVP favorite right now? And I guess that's how we should end this.
Well, first, I wanna make fun of my statement when talking about Dallas and on the MVP. I said the words Luka Doncic will be the MVP. So that definitely didn't go well. MVP race comes down to two people. One I think deserves to be MVP. The other I think will end up getting the MVP award.
Can we see if we agree?
Yeah, well, I'll just say it. You tell me if I think you're right. Right now, I think Nikola Jokic deserves the MVP award, but I think LeBron James will win the MVP award.
We don't. Season. I think Embiid, because of his team, he is literally carrying his team, and Simmons. I think it's Embiid and LeBron. I agree with you in the same order there. I think Embiid deserves it. I think LeBron will win it. Except the Lakers are kind of sliding. That narrative's going to change. I really, to be honest with you, just personal opinion, recording a podcast aside, I have no clue who's going to win the MVP. I think it's literally going to be, if you're a bettor out there, like, you should be nervous that you put a future bet and you put your life mortgage on whoever, Luka, right? Like, you should be scared. You should be worried. This is such a hard year. I think every award pick this year is going to be close. It's going to be tough. It's going to be this is going to be a really exciting award show for the first time in a while, because they turned that award show into a joke. But I think it's really, I want Embiid to win it because I think he truly has been the most valuable player on his team, and he's been the most valuable player in that conference because that team could probably have finished as the 1 seed. That's just personal basketball opinion. Do I want LeBron to win one? Absolutely. Do I think he'll win one? Maybe. Do I want it to happen? Or do I realistically, do I think it's realistic? Probably not. I don't think LeBron's probably going to win it. It's not. I just don't think it's that narrative this year.
To quickly run through the rest of them, I'll just kind of summarize it as I took it. You can chime in if you want to. You don't have to. Defensive player of the year, I think I was right for the most part. I had Rudy Gobert. He's leading in defensive win shares right now. Rudy looks great.
Who did I have? I don't remember.
You had Giannis.
I didn't. At Giannis. It's not going to be Giannis. I think it's going to be Ben Simmons. I want it to be Ben Simmons, and it will probably be Rudy Gobert. That's all I have.
Well, I was looking at the stats today. Rudy leads in defensive win shares. Part of that, a lot of that is that I was doing so well. Defensive box plus minus, I think is also interesting to look at in that regard, which is led by Marc Gasol, surprisingly enough. Great job, Marc Gasol.
Isn't he pretty high in your Raptor stat you like so much? Isn't
I don't know.
Pretty high in that Raptor stat? I'm pretty sure he has.
I will check.
On Raptor
Mike Conley does great in Raptor, but
absolutely.
Raptor loves the Utah Jazz.
Correct.
Yeah. Rookie of the year, we both said LaMelo. We were both right. We can go ahead and give him the award because no one else is getting it.
I mean,
shout out to Tyrese Halliburton and Anthony Edwards, going to probably come in second and third. James Wiseman probably should be there, but he won't get voted there.
Exactly.
Coach of the year, I like your pick at this moment. You said Steve Nash. It's looking good. My pick, looking less good.
I'm hoping you said it. I'm sorry. I feel bad.
We started laughing before I said what it was, so people are probably confused. In thinking that the Atlanta Hawks would make the largest jump in the NBA this season, I said Lloyd Pierce would be coach of the year. Now, if that ends up happening, something wildly strange has happened in the next few months that come after this, because Lloyd Pierce is no longer the head coach of the Atlanta Hawks.
Can I tell you what's not going to happen?
Yeah,
yeah. Your coach of the year candidate is unemployed as of today. It's not happening. Steve Nash will win it, and I will stand by that.
Unless it goes to who coaches Utah. That's slipping my mind right now. Is it Quinn Snyder?
Yeah.
Yep. There's an argument it might go to Quinn Snyder, but
all right.
So
probably will, by the way. What you got for me on trivia?
Yeah, so Trevor and I aren't great with predictions, but here's trivia, the fun question. We talked about this person at one point during this podcast, so keep that as your hint.
Talked about a lot of people.
Yeah,
Okay.
but we zeroed in on this guy. Who currently is leading the NBA in total minutes played? Not average minutes per game, but who has played the most minutes prior to game starting tonight in the NBA?
I'm not going to answer Jeopardy music because I thought about it last time. I don't want to think about it too long. I have two guesses since you gave me one hint because we talked about him. I either want one hint or two guesses.
You get two guesses. Go ahead.
I'll take two guesses. What I actually think it is I think it's Bradley Beal.
Okay.
No.
I want to hear both guesses. It's not Beal, but
Bradley Beal. Okay, it's not Beal. If it's not Bradley Beal, I think the trick question, because you like him, it's Nikola Jokic, even though he's normally not a guy that plays a ton of minutes like long throughout the season. It's Nikola.
Also, no, I'll give one more hint because I want to let you give another guess.
Okay, so
this
currently,
guy
by the way,
carried
for the standing
his
sake,
team. Yeah. For the standing sake, are we going to say that you're 0-1? Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
I'll give you half a point if you get it right after this hint.
Okay.
This guy has carried his team. We agree on that, and his team has done surprisingly better than either of us thought. And that's your last hint.
I can't look at the standings. That's not fair. He's all right. Say it again. He's looked surprising.
This guy has carried his team. He has carried his team, and the team is doing surprisingly better than either of us thought.
Oh, I don't want a point. It's Damian Lillard. I don't want my free point. It's Damian Lillard.
It's not Damian Lillard. It is Julius Randle, who has played the most minutes in the NBA so far this season. He has played 1,285 minutes at the moment.
Do you know who's second for reference? I'm so confused.
I'll look it up.
Why are you looking it up? What in the world?
Julius Randle.
Shout out to Julius Randle and them New York Knicks. I wish we were a visual podcast because last week I wore my New York Knicks t-shirt that I got.
Let's see how close you got.
Beal was probably
Jokic was fifth.
Wow. Okay.
Beal not in the top 20. Lillard at 18. So you have to kind of factor in guys that take rest days. Fred VanVleet coming in at second. LeBron James third most total minutes played so far this season.
That shouldn't be the case.
Incredible stamina. Yeah. Seventh most minutes played, also coming from a New York Knick and RJ Barrett. So.
Wow. So you mentioned the sophomore slump. He's played a lot of minutes, and
he's played a lot of minutes,
and he's been below average averages wise, because obviously when you play a ton, you're going to shoot more.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, that's been fun, man.
All right. I lead 1-0.
Yeah, I know. I hate that because I really thought you were going to be stumped by the rebound question. I want to say this to the listeners, and then we can close it out. Next week, the Two Pointers podcast will not be live. Unfortunately, I have had this vacation planned for a long time. It's actually good timing for the NBA season, unless I say this and watch tomorrow some crazy news stories is going to happen. I shouldn't have said that. I just caused the Two Pointers podcast curse. And as well, it'll also give us time, part of my vacation or part of my time between now and I believe the 15th and 16th when the pod's going to go up. Of course, Selection Sunday's on the 14th. We will be covering, we mentioned at the top of the first two episodes or so, we're a basketball podcast, not a NBA podcast. We will be covering college basketball. I don't know how we're going to do format wise yet. Our picks will have, we'll probably have our Final Four at least, or our Elite Eight. I don't know if we'll have time to run through 64 teams, but we will be hitting that in a couple of weeks or in a week and a half or so. We'll be getting that topic taken care of. So anything else?
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, listeners, be prepared for what's probably going to be an outrageously long NCAA basketball tournament preview podcast, as this is something that I love above almost anything else. I love the NCAA tournament. Those few days between Selection Sunday and the start of the tournament and then that first weekend are outstanding, and I cannot wait. Which, by the way, that first weekend was starting like right now because I'd be so happy.
I know. But which, by the way, we get longer. It's good for us, but not as fans. We're going to be itching to start, but we get longer to prepare this pod, and we also get longer to post it and make sure it's right and make sure we got it all up and taken care of. So close this out, Josh. It's been a long time.
Yeah. Well, we'll be off for a couple of weeks here, guys, but we'll see you soon come the 15th. Thank you all for listening. This has been the Two Pointers Podcast.
I'm Trevor.
And I'm Josh, and we will see you soon.
See ya.
Bye.